Hi, my name is Dean Kyte. I'm a Melbourne writer, filmmaker, and flâneur. I'm the author of the Melbourne Flâneur and the Spleen of Melbourne, prose, poetry, and fiction. And today I'm going to introduce you to the selections that I've made from Charles Baudelaire's landmark collection of poems, Les Fleurs du Mal. I'm calling them Toxic Blossoms, and I'm going to explain to you why very shortly. We're looking at the dust jacket of my forthcoming collection of poems and prose poems translated from the works of Baudelaire, Maledictions, Blasphemies, Laments, selections from Toxic Blossoms and Parisian Spleen. If we go inside the book, we see here on page 43 the beginning of the section devoted to the poems I've selected from Les Fleurs du Mal, and you will see them here under a title that you will not recognize, Toxic Blossoms. Often the collection Les Fleurs du Mal has been translated as the flowers of evil. And while that's a literal translation, it's neither elegant nor, I think, ultimately correct. I think a lot of translators have overlooked the role that illness plays in Baudelaire's thinking. The evil stems from sickness, and it's a sickness of spirit. I played around with a number of variations on the title, thinking about ideas of maleficence, noxiousness, poison, the baneful quality of the flowers. I came up with quite a few variations, but the one that ultimately stuck with me is having a certain music to it and also conveying what I think Baudelaire is actually intending to convey by these words, les fleurs du mal, toxic blossoms. That to me speaks to the spirit of our times. You hear the word toxic and toxicity thrown about with abandon everywhere. Baudelaire's baneful flowers, his maleficent flowers, are filled with a toxicity. They are filled with a poison. And I'll give you the rationale as to why I have chosen Toxic Blossoms as, I think, a more appropriate alternative to the conventional translation of the flowers of evil. Here we have the famous dedication in Les Fleurs du Mal that Baudelaire makes at the beginning of that work to his friend, the poet and journalist Théophile Gautier. Au poète impeccable, au parfait magicien, est lettre française à mon très cher et très vénéré maître et ami Théophile Gautier. Avec les sentiments de la plus profonde humilité, je dédie ces fleurs maladives. Now, if we turn to the following page in my book, we'll see how I interpret that. To the impeccable poet, Baudelaire says, to the perfect magician in the field of French letters. Now, this line is significant, one of the most significant in the dedication for a couple of reasons, and not least because it contains this unusual, uncommon preposition es, which we don't often encounter in French. Es means in the domain of. When it comes after a title, parfait magicien, perfect magician, Baudelaire is indicating that this poet impeccable, Gautier, is a learned man in a field, as in the domain of French letters. So if we turn back to my version, we see that this impeccable poet, as Baudelaire regards him, this definitively perfect magician in the field of French letters, one who has distinguished himself in a wise domain. He is a doctor of the church, in a sense, for Baudelaire. The deeper that we proceed into Les Fleurs du Mal, the more we come across notions of magic and occultism and being able to master arcane arts, not least of which is the art of poetry itself. Its evocative, its incantatory quality, its ability to call forward into existence the supernatural. Baudelaire regards Gautier as possessing that perfect mastery of letters, which is capable of sorcery. To my dearest and most venerated master and friend, Gautier was born 10 years before Baudelaire in 1811, so he is a somewhat older man. He had already made a significant name for himself in French letters as a partisan and defender of Victor Hugo at the height of Romanticism. When Baudelaire came into his paternal inheritance in mid-1842, he established himself on the Ile Saint-Louis, and in the following year he took rooms in the Hôtel Pimodan where Gautier was living. The Hôtel Pimodan is the present-day Hôtel Lausanne, one of the most significant buildings on the Ile Saint-Louis in Paris. Together at the Hôtel Pimodan, they establish a club for hash eaters, and their adventures in drug experimentation are documented by Baudelaire in Les Paradis Artificiels. So these were bosom friends. They were intimately aligned. Gautier was a few years older than Baudelaire. He was established in the field of journalism and could therefore be um, legitimately regarded as his master, the one who had taken the younger man under his wing and was showing him the ropes of Paris. So he dedicates this book with the deepest gratitude to his dearest and most venerated master and friend, Théophile Gautier. But as many people have observed, there is in Baudelaire's dedications, whether it is this one to Gautier in Les Fleurs du Mal, whether it is the dedicatory letter to Arsène Houssaye in Le Spleen de Paris, there is always an edge to his dedications. There is a sense of insincere fawning, and we get a sense of this in the way he addresses himself to Gautier. Baudelaire is simultaneously a man with an overweening ego and a profound sense of his own inferiority by bourgeois standards. He could not have been insensitive to Gautier's manifest success and his own manifest failure. He was the perfect magician, the supreme alchemist when it came to turning words, incantatory, evocative, poetic words, into the filthy lucre of gold. Baudelaire, by contrast, was singularly incapable of doing that. And here we see why. With sentiments of the deepest humility, I dedicate these unhealthy flowers, ces fleurs maladives. These are not merely evil flowers. These are sickly flowers. These are flowers which have a toxic venom in them. Wring them out and distill them, and you obtain a healing poison, which was not at all to the taste of people in France in the mid-19th century when this collection was first published. So Baudelaire, with his overweening ego and his equally immense sense of inferiority, is both patronizing Théophile Gautier in this dedication, and he is also being a supplicant to him. He is asking him to be the patron of his work and to see it through the press, to give it a good rap. So there you have it. That is the reason why I have chosen to translate the poems from Les Fleurs du Mal under the heading of Toxic Blossoms, to emphasize the evil nature of the flowers which Baudelaire has pressed between these pages, is to take a literal and unpoetic interpretation of what he actually means. Whatever evil is to be derived from his incantatory sorcery with words is a function of the state of his unhealth, of his illness, and the tragic awareness that he has of his debility, both physical and mental. Now, my book, Maledictions, Blasphemies, Laments, Selections from Toxic Blossoms and Parisian Spleen, is going ahead. It is due to be published in June of 2025. You can sign up to register your interest in purchasing a copy when the book is released. I invite you to make your way with all alacrity to my website, deankyte.com, and here on the welcome page, you will find a sign-up form which will allow you to register your interest in purchasing a copy of this book when it comes out in June. You just enter your name and your email address and you click this button and I will put you on the mailing list. If you click on the cover here, this will take you to a page inside the website which will tell you a little bit more about the project and also features a sign-up form here towards the bottom.